Hey guys, I'm Mark. Today it's a beautiful day and I wanted to show you my hot pepper bed. It's early September, so right now those nights are getting a little cooler, which the pepper plants just love. So I'm going to go over a little bit of some cultural things about how I grow these guys, and then I'm going to go through plant by plant and tell you what it is and what I think about it. So to start off with, hot peppers tend to grow much larger than like most sweet peppers do. So the way that I grew these was I recycled my tomato cages and just kind of came up with a new way of growing these. Some hot peppers will vary in size from plant to plant, obviously, as you can see with this example right here, but in general, they all get pretty big. So I just used one of my tomato cages that's 50 inches tall by 24 inches wide and 24 inches deep. And I have a video on my channel about how I made these if you're interested in looking at them. I love them. They work great for peppers, they work great for tomatoes, and I like the fact that they collapse down at the end of the season. I also have another video on what's in the soil, how I make the soil in my raised bed, so check that out if you're curious as well. But they work great for pepper plants. This is not one individual plant in each cage. I have 4 plants in each cage that are planted about 12 inches apart in a square like that. And they fill it out really nicely. The center of each cage, they're spaced 4 feet on center. So there's 12 total cages in here. There would be 12 different varieties, but one variety I chose to plant 2 cages of it for reasons I'll explain in a little while. But that's how I grow them. Now I want to just get into, we'll talk about one by one what they are and what I like about them. This guy on the end, what better one to start with than the hottest pepper in the entire world. This is Carolina Reaper. You can see the size of the plant is just massive. I'm 6 feet tall and it's close to that. I mean, it will be 6 feet by the end of the season for sure. But down here is where all the action's taking place on these guys right now. We still haven't lost too many of the lower leaves yet. As the season progresses and it gets later into the fall, some of these lower leaves will fall off and you'll be able to see in here a little bit more clearly. But for right now, this is the Carolina Reaper, and you can tell production is not what this plant was bred for. There are not many fruits on this plant for how large it is, but that's not the purpose of this plant. The purpose of this plant and what it was bred for is to make super hot peppers. I mean, one of these peppers is probably the same amount of heat as almost an entire jalapeno plant if you add them all up. But they're just nasty, dangerous looking peppers. I'm going to use the white sign to kind of give you a little bit of a contrast there. They might show up better. See how they got this little tail on them? That little tail, I've never seen a pepper do that. But they got those like blisters all over the skin, and you can tell that would hurt you. I just grew these as a novelty. I'm not going to eat them. In fact, hot peppers, I can't take much heat at all. A jalapeno is about as far as I would be willing to go. Anything beyond that is just painful for me. So I grew these as a novelty, and I might use them to make up some rabbit spray for my plants. If I dry these peppers out and blend them up into some kind of spray, I can spray that on the foliage of certain things to keep rabbits and deer at bay. But other than that, there's really no other purpose I can think of for having something like this. But I enjoy growing them. Next down the line is a much smaller plant. It's way more compact and it was bred for that. Let me get rid of that sign and pick up this one. This is Super Chili. This is an AAS winner, which is a very big deal. This plant has several things going for it. Number one, I would say, is just the production. I mean, all the way throughout the inside of this plant, it is just dripping with peppers. They're small, they're little, but I think that's kind of a nice thing, because if they were much larger than this and the production was a lot more, then the branches would probably bend down a lot farther. When you have these little guys like this, it kind of distributes the weight on the branches that they can handle this kind of massive production a little bit better. But they're small, they're all uniform like that. You could use this pepper as a chili pepper to eat it. That's, I think, its main purpose. And then you could also use it really just ornamentally. I mean, this would look great in your flower garden just as much as it looks great in the vegetable garden. I think that if you had a patio, or you just wanted to grow your peppers in a pot for whatever reason, this would be an excellent choice. It would just kind of, the habit of it, it doesn't get monstrous like one of these guys. It just stays sort of small and manageable, and you still get all the peppers that you could really know what to do with. They would sort of cascade down over the side of the pot. I think it would be a fantastic patio pepper. So that's super chili. This next one here, well, you can see, I'll show you up high. This is the tallest, it looks like, so far in this whole bed. This one, it's a little bit taller than me. Well, you have to account for the fact that they're in a semi-raised bed. The raised bed itself is about 6 inches tall. So another 5 or 6 inches and this will be as tall as I am. This is lemon drop. It's a very nice, as you can see, vigorous pepper plant. And the reason it's called lemon drop is because it has these bright canary yellow peppers that are just gorgeous. I mean, you can't really get prettier than that. My friend Aaron, who comes over and helps out on the weekends in the garden, this is his favorite hot pepper that I've ever grown, just flavor-wise, and I think the shape of it. This is a little bit outside of my spectrum as far as what I can handle in heat. I can take a little bit of it. I can tell you that the flavor is really good, but I'm sort of a wuss when it comes to hot peppers. This plant, the one thing that I wouldn't say that I don't like about it, but the one thing that's sort of a drawback is that it takes a while for these peppers to ripen, to turn yellow. You'd have to give it about another month yet before it really starts flushing out with ripe peppers. I had the same thing last year. So, but other than that, I mean, the production is just fantastic if you got the time to wait for it. Next in line, this plant is about as tall as me when I'm kneeling down. This is Red Ember. This is another AAS winner. And this is more of a traditional cayenne pepper. The production on it is just nuts. Throughout this entire plant, or these 4 plants, it's just loaded in there. But it's a nice sized pepper for culinary reasons. I mean, to dry it out, this is a good pepper for drying because it's not too big. If it were much larger than this, then sometimes you can get into like rot issues and stuff. I find that these smaller guys dry out a little bit easier. They give you less problems. They're just a little bit more forgiving. But just a standard good red cayenne pepper. If you're looking for that, nothing fancy about it, good production, good pretty red peppers, then this might be the one for you. Next down the line is Emerald Fire Jalapeno. I only planted 1 jalapeno plant this year. I keep saying 1 plant. When I say 1 plant, I mean one of these cages, because every one of these cages has the same 4 plants inside of it. I don't know if I mentioned that, but this is the only jalapeno cage that I planted this year. Last year, I grew 3 different kinds of jalapenos. I grew the Emerald Fire, which is this one, and then I also grew Mucho Nacho, which is a smaller jalapeno, like the fruit size is smaller, and then I also grew just the traditional heirloom jalapeno that's been around for forever. And what I like about this one is, well, I like several things about it. Number one, the fruit size. These are just massive jalapenos. They're big, they have thick walls, and they're heavy. It's just this is a quite substantial jalapeno pepper, but there's the Scovilles on it. I don't know if I mentioned underneath each one of the titles here is the Scoville units, and that's a measure of how hot they are. Now, I just got these offline. I haven't measured the Scoville units myself, so there is a pretty wide margin on some of them that you'll see. But it just kind of gives you a little bit of an idea from one to the next of how hot they are. So this is 2,500 Scovilles. It's a little bit more on the mild side as far as jalapenos go. Some jalapenos will be up around 8,000. This one doesn't pack as much of a punch, which is nice because if you're doing things like jalapenos roasted in the oven, like jalapeno poppers or something like that, or fry them, then you know, in a situation where you're eating the entire jalapeno pepper, well then if it's super hot, you can only eat like 2 or 3 before you're done. This one, if you want to add more heat, you can always do that. You know, that's just a great thing in general when it comes to cooking. You know, salt, pepper, hot pepper, you can always add more. You can't ever take it away. Oh, and one last thing that I love about this pepper is it's got very little corking that happens to it. See these tiny little cracks that develop on the skin? That's called corking. And for whatever reason, jalapenos tend to do it much more than really any other hot pepper that I've grown. But for whatever reason, this variety just does great. They're nice, silky smooth peppers, great uniform color and shape to them. So as far as jalapenos go, that's my favorite one so far. That's Emerald Fire Hybrid. Now this guy on the end, this is a very interesting pepper. This is an heirloom that is unique to the Baltimore, Philadelphia area. This heirloom was saved by the African American communities in Baltimore and Philadelphia, and it's called fish pepper. And the reason why it's called fish pepper is because we have the Chesapeake Bay and we have the Atlantic right close by, and a lot of these were traditionally used with a lot of seafood and shellfish cooking. But it's a good cayenne pepper. It's got a unique flavor to it, and I think the most unique thing about this plant is its variegation. You can see the leaves have that very nice, pretty cream-colored variegation to them, and then that variegation actually continues right on into the fruits themselves. So there's a green one. You can see the cream-colored stripes going through it. Very beautiful pepper. Here's once they start to turn red. You can see the striping continuing on down. So I gotta love my heirlooms, especially the ones that are unique to our area. So what I'm gonna do, that's the end of the line. I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna move around. I'm gonna go all the way around the bed so that the sun stays on the front side of my face, because if I walk around this way and go that way, then it's just gonna be a black shadow the whole time. But while I'm walking, I'm just gonna hold up this sign and what the fruits are. That way, if you didn't write it down, you just get a gauge from one to the next of how big the plants are. So that's fish pepper. Okay. When I'm crouched down the whole time, you might not be able to see the whole plant for what it is. If I'm standing up like this, I think it maybe gives you a bit of a better perspective. Emerald Fire, favorite jalapeno. This is Red Ember, awesome pepper, loaded with fruit. And once again, we're in early fall. So once we start getting into fall itself, then the lower leaves will kind of fall off of these guys and you'll get a better shot inside the plant. But right now they're pretty heavily foliated. There's not much I can do about that. This is Lemon Drop, probably the largest in terms of plant size in the garden so far. Super Chili, probably the shortest, definitely the shortest in the pepper garden so far. That guy's only not even waist height. So perfect for containers. And then the Carolina Reaper. Always gotta be careful when I'm touching this or nearby it. Another gigantic pepper. So that concludes this side of the bed. Now I've got another 6 cages over here on this side. And this is an excellent one to start off with. This is Jamaican chocolate. It's a Jamaican chocolate habanero style pepper. And I pretty much love everything about this plant. Oops, I dropped my receiver there. I hope I don't do that one day when I'm in tall grass. I'll never find it. This is Jamaican chocolate habanero, and I love pretty much everything about this plant. It's an enormous plant to start off with. Very healthy, nice, shiny, dark green foliage, and then the production is just crazy on it. I don't know how the camera's gonna pick it up with the shadows, but all the way in there are just bunches and bunches of these nice chocolate habanero peppers. I think I just heard a bird. There's a bird in there. But the color of these guys is just amazing. I mean, that chocolate brown, it's a perfect description of that color. It's like a nice, warm, chocolate, almost purplish color. It's like such an amazing color. I almost want to take one of these over to the paint store and see if they can like color match it, because it's just so pretty. But it's also not a very shiny pepper. So it shows off that color even that much better. I don't know if the white backgrounds are gonna help this out or if it's just gonna glow. I'm not too sure yet. We're working with a new camera today, so bear with us. So that's Jamaican chocolate habanero. Now this one is Serrano. Now a lot of people know what this is, but not enough people know what this is. It's a fantastic pepper. It's sort of similar to a jalapeno, but the fruits are smaller and there's a lot more of them. Typically, people will eat these green, but almost every pepper out there will eventually turn red. A lot of them do, not everyone, but most peppers, if you leave them on the plant. Jalapenos do the same thing. they will turn red. They're most often used green like this, but you can see there's the sign and the name and how big they are. Nice finger-sized peppers. What I like about these guys is they are perfect for pickling. Number one, the heat of these it's right there at the cusp of like a jalapeno. It's any more hotter than this, it would be too much for me. But this is just the right amount. And if you're going to be eating pickled peppers or making pickled peppers whole, then that is really what this pepper is so nice for, because the inside of it, the seed cavity is so small it's almost non-existent. And what that does is when this pepper gets pickled and the pickling brine gets all inside of the pepper, then when you go ahead and bite into it, it doesn't just explode all over you. There's only a little bit of liquid inside of there, so the actual eating experience of it is much nicer. And you can pack so many of those guys in a jar too. Very nice, clean, uniform fruits. So that's Serrano. You can find them at all different kinds of places. But that's just, I mean, it is just covered. It's just dripping in there. I mean, it would probably take at least an hour to harvest this whole plant. I look forward to doing that because now I got my video on the hot peppers. Now I can go ahead and pick them all. I didn't want to pick all the peppers and then do a video about them because you got to see the peppers on the plant, right? So that's Serrano. Next down the line, the next three that I'm going to show you here are a shorter growth habit type pepper. This is another one that's pretty popular, but not popular enough. This is hot Hungarian wax. It's fairly common. You can find it in most places. Now this is a pepper plant that is way hotter than what it looks like. It's actually hotter than a jalapeno, at least the Emerald Fire jalapenos that I'm growing. I can't just bite into one of these. It's too hot for me. But some people might like that. The plants are very healthy. They're smaller. They don't take over the whole garden, and they just get totally consumed with fruit. It's heavy. I mean, that's why I like these cages so much, is even for the shorter style plants, it supports them. I mean, if there wasn't a cage here, these peppers would be all over the ground and they'd be making contact with the ground and they'd sort of spoil. So I'm very happy with how these cages are doing and keeping them up off the ground. So if you like a lot of heat and a small package, hot Hungarian wax, that's probably the one for you. Okay. Now this one, right next door, I would describe this, it's called Hot Sunset. I would describe this as sort of a cross between a banana pepper and a hot Hungarian wax. It's very similar to a banana pepper, that's what it's classified as, but it's got heat to it. 650 Scovilles, I think that's a little low. I think this pepper's got a little more heat than that, but it's not too much. So if you like hot pickled banana pepper rings, like I do, like on a sub or something like that, then if you want a little bit more heat to them, you can just use these instead. And the fruits themselves tend to, they tend to color up a little bit more than the regular banana peppers will. So I have noticed that. They get that like sort of red or orange blush to them a little bit earlier in the season. This one next door is the same thing. Again, that's the one oddball variety that I told you about in the beginning of the video. I just decided to grow two cages of these guys because I wanted to do a lot of processing, and this way I ensure I have the volume. And then last but not least, on the very end, this is a Red Habanero. Again, the production is just amazing. Look in there, it's just incredible, isn't it? Loaded with peppers. I can't wait till the bottom leaves start to fall off because this plant in particular is really going to put on a show. The orange one, the orange variety that's very similar to this, puts on a really nice show as well. But it's a good tall plant, gets covered in these little red habanero peppers. Again, the variety is called Lantern Red. And it's a very clean looking pepper, a very pretty pepper. You get a lot of them, and here's something nice about habaneros that I didn't know until very recently, is that with any hot pepper, most of the heat, or in some cases all the heat, is contained within the seed walls, these little walls that hold the seeds on them, the ribs inside, and then the seeds themselves. So the outside wall, like the walls of the pepper that don't touch anything, you can see I'm cutting it off right here. That wall right there does not contain any heat, at least in the case of these habaneros right here. So if you're going to be making like habanero jam, apparently that's how you do it, is you just avoid all the inside, like the seed ribs, and you just use these parts. And I mean, that's not hot at all. It's literally just like a bell pepper. The only heat that you're going to get is if you like accidentally touch your knife to the ribs and then, you know, kind of carry some heat over that way. But very pleasant, and you get, you know, if you're going to take the time to dissect them, then that's a good way to get that very nice habanero flavor without getting all the heat. And again, if you want more heat, you can always add it to it. So, lantern red habanero. Let me go back through. I'm going to do the same thing like we did on the other side. I'm just going to stand up and walk and hold the signs up. That way when the camera's backed up a little bit, you can see the size of the plants. Just gives you a better idea of how tall they are, how full they are, and whatnot. So that's lantern red. These two are hot sunset. You can see there's some morning glory vine or binder. I hate that weed. That is just a tough weed to get out once it starts growing in your garden. If you start seeing morning glories bloom in your garden and they look like this, yeah, just get rid of them. They're not too much fun to play with. Hot sunset, that's these two guys. Shorter plants, but very good productivity. This is a very similar growth habit on the hot Hungarian wax. This one's only not even waist high. And then Serrano, gotta have this. Every garden's gotta have a Serrano pepper. As long as you have some way of keeping it up off the ground. See how tall they get. Just find out some way to keep them from blowing over. I haven't used any strings or anything like that. All these peppers have had is just the cages. I haven't pruned them at all. I say that, I'm probably, you know, cursing myself now because now we're gonna have a giant thunderstorm come through and just knock all these guys down. But that would be my luck. And then that is the last one on this side. That's Jamaican chocolate habanero. Gorgeous pepper. This is another one that you just gotta have. But the inside of this pepper, I will say, to finish off with, it doesn't do exactly the same thing as the lantern red jalapeno down there on the end. This one, I did want to show you this. This one, the walls, when you cut them off, whoops, let me pick that back up. This is one where the rules don't always apply. So you see that stripe going down through there, where it's sort of like those blistered kind of cells? That guy right there contains a ton of heat. So, so if you're going to be making habanero jam or something like that, then you got to pay attention to what variety you're going to use, because this would take a lot more dissecting in order to get, you know, the not hot parts out of it. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching my hot pepper video. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do, because it gets my videos up in front of more people, more eyes, bumps the whole channel up. But for now, thank you again so much for watching this video. I hope you liked it. I'll see you guys next time.